You
Hmm.
asked how I got there, and I would say I've lived it. I've lived a high stress profession. I mean, granted, I was a teacher and a coach, but if you know anything about education, we're our own version of frontline.
Right, right,
And
right.
I've experienced burnout and struggle and exhaustion, and my relation and watched my relationships just continue to deteriorate. So leaving and finding new tools and new skills and seeing what it can bring to your life, I just want to share that.
Today and want to take a moment to express my gratitude for you spending time out of your busy day to join us. Our goal here is to inspire meaningful change in your life, and today's episode is no exception. Imagine for a moment your life as a beautiful tapestry, each thread representing a different aspect of your existence, your relationships, your emotions, and your dreams. To create a stunning design, you must first master the art of weaving these threads together, and that requires self leadership and self awareness as foundational elements. Our guest today, Jenifer Hardy, will guide us through this process, emphasizing the importance of taking action to break patterns as well as to confront our fears. Jenifer is the COO of the Academy of Mode of Action and a passionate advocate for high stress professionals, including first responders and educators. With her extensive experience in navigating burnout and emotional challenges, she has developed what's known as the CARES framework. CARES is an acronym: communication, awareness, resiliency, emotional literacy, and self mastery. This powerful tool is designed to help individuals manage their emotional well being and improve their interactions with others. As we dive into our conversation, you'll discover that courage is not just an innate quality, it's a skill that can be cultivated through practice and action. So, let's dive in and learn how to weave the threads of our lives into a beautiful tapestry of audacious living. Hey, Jenifer, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, oftentimes I'll talk how great it is to sort of engage in conversations that potentially can have the ability to impact others in a really positive fashion. And so, particularly around, um, bringing sort of, I would say I'll use meaningful change in their lives, right? That's a really important one. And I know that sort of falls in line with a lot of your work. You want to motivate people, not just motivate them, but you want them to take action for that meaningful change. And we'll talk about what motive action is all about, and I'll get you to explain that. But perhaps as a starting point, Jenifer, if you could maybe introduce yourself to our audience and talk about the work that you do and what's gotten you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. So, as you mentioned, my name is Jen Hardy, and I am the COO at the Academy of Motive Action right now with my best friend and business partner, Irina Alexander. We've been together for about 2-ish years now, but working separately and supporting each other for probably 5 years. And so it just kind of realizing that entrepreneurial life is it can be pretty lonely sometimes, and so we were supporting each other so much that it got to a point where like let's just join forces so we're not doing everything alone and find ways to balance out all of the tasks as well. Uh,
Right.
but specifically, we support high stress professionals, for example, first responders, corporate leaders, educators, mental health professionals, like healthcare professionals, I should say, to reduce the risk of burnout, to overcome really like the heaviness, right? The weight of what comes with those positions, and how do they navigate the emotional toll? How do they navigate the communication that's required to really increase their quality of life with all the
Mhm.
people around them? We're both big believers that our quality of life is based on our relationships. And to have a relationship, you have to be able to relate, what we're doing right now, right? And to be able to relate, you have to be able to communicate. And so we kind of backwards map it in that way where we start talking about inter and intrapersonal communication. How are you talking with and dealing with yourself first,
Right.
self leadership first, and then moving forward from there of how to better relate and communicate with the people in your lives.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
asked how I got there, and I would say I've lived it. I've lived a high stress profession. I mean, granted, I was a teacher and a coach, but if you know anything about education, we're our own version of frontline, you know?
Right, right,
And
right.
I've experienced burnout and struggle and exhaustion and my relation and watched my relationships just continue to deteriorate. So leaving and finding new tools and new skills and seeing what it can bring to your life, I just want to share that.
Hmm. And when we talk about change, or at least any sort of meaningful change, it really starts with kind of self awareness. I oftentimes use an analogy of a living room. So picture a living room where you've got your couch and your coffee table and your light stand and everything's in the living like a typical. And if you turn off that light, right, the items are still there. They're just in the dark. But if you turn it back on, they're now visible. Well, it's important to understand the light didn't put them there. The light just allowed you to see the things that were already there. The things, so instead of stubbing your toe on the coffee table in the dark, you now turn around, you can see the coffee table, so you can avoid it as an example. And so I think awareness is just it's a key starting point in any level of greatness as far as I'm concerned.
100% agree. I mean, it is where we start is awareness. I mean, if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. And leaders, when I say leadership, I want to redefine that too, because moms out there, you're leaders. Like you're leading the household most of the time, right? But if you're not leading yourself, you can't lead others. You can't really, and you're right. If I'm not aware of my patterns and the things that are just already happening and already there, then I'm not going to be able to shift anything.
You're right. And so the I guess a bulk of your work really starts there, like helping to build that self-awareness and it's really easy to say, hey, let's turn on the light and we can see all the stuff in the living room. But sometimes we don't want to see the stuff in the living room. Sometimes there's things that are in the way. Sometimes it could be fear or a whole bevy of things, really. Also, I wonder if you talk about like getting past those obstacles to be able to increase your own self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually reading a really great book right now called Already Free by Bruce Lipton. And it's not necessarily new information, but I really appreciate his approach and concepts around this exact topic because you're right. Most people want change, but they don't want to have to take the responsibility to have the change because it's terrifying, right? It's who am I going to lose and what am I going to lose? What am I going to have to dive into, roll around in, and get all over me to
Mm,
experience? I've been spending my whole life trying to avoid rejection, to avoid not feeling worthy, to avoid, loneliness, to avoid anxiety and fear. And now you want me to go roll around in it and like try to enjoy it, basically. It's like, yeah.
right, right, right.
Cool. Once I do that, I'm going to feel new and different because now I have kind of like this, I'm going to use the word tolerance, if you will,
Okay. Okay.
navigate those emotions in a way I never have. So now I'm going to show up newly with you, and you may have your old patterns and stories needed me to be that way. And now I'm not, and that might no longer work, and that relationship might now fall away, or it will grow. And I think that is just absolutely terrifying for people. One, to have to deal with the things they've spent their whole life. All those things in the dark have been helping us not go there.
Right.
And then secondly, who or what am I going to quote unquote lose, right? Now that I have taken that step. And it stops people a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, it does. It does. And so when we sort of talk about this podcast and being audacious and why that's so significant, it allows you to move past those things that are stopping individuals, right? It allows you to say, okay, I'm really afraid of this, but I'm going to try it anyways. And that expression, try it anyways, is one of my favorites because that allows for sort of possibilities and all sorts of potential, right? So I'm going to try it anyways. That recognizes that I don't have the answer, but I'm going to still pull that red thread, or I don't know what's around the corner, but I'm still going to launch for it because, one of two things are going to happen is you're going to be successful at whether you try or you're not. And even when you're not, you learn from that. There's still opportunities to build and develop and grow. And so, yeah, try it anyway is an expression I'm a really big fan of.
Yeah, absolutely. My version of that is leap and the net will appear, right? Like just try it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
We get
And then what happens? What happens is the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? And you start to make more calculated leaps, as an example. Um, uh, I mean, and I've caught myself doing this all the time, right? Where I'm like, I'll just do it; it'll figure itself out, right? And that's because throughout my life, I've tried and I've stockpiled. I've got a whole lifetime of things I've tried that worked out. So why wouldn't I try the next one? Like so it builds your tolerance and your level of resiliency and makes you stronger, your confidence, all of these things that naturally happen when we're, and as expression oftentimes you when we celebrate our wins or keep record of our achievements, right? You look back and it goes, yeah, I did those 10 things and it wasn't a problem. What's wrong with doing the 11th, right?
Right. I think what you're speaking to in my world is that courage is a skill.
Mm,
So many people think we just have it or we don't, and oh, I just have to like cultivate it and figure it out. It's like, no, it's a skill. Like you literally do what you just said. You try it anyway, you leap anyway, you turn the corner anyway, and it will be hard and it may be tough and there might be yucky and there might be awesome, but you don't know unless you try. And if you try, you start to build what you said, the resiliency, the confidence, the courage. So courage is a skill. You
it
gotta
is.
cultivate it, you gotta practice it.
Yeah, skill. Another way I talked about courage in the past is it's a muscle that you're constantly building, right? Like you don't go to the gym today and you work on how great I'm completely worked out, I'm good. It's a constant, ongoing process, and I think to know when you sort of recognize that, and also recognize too that it's not just about I'm doing this thing to get this thing because that process and that journey is also very important. If your outcomes based, I get it, right? Like, but you also have to recognize that if you don't achieve that outcome, does that mean you fail? And I would say no.
Oh, I would agree, absolutely. And sure, maybe by societal terms and definitions, Webster Dictionary, it might be look as like a fail. But if you look at the most successful, most amazing humans, they are failing faster. They want to fail as fast as possible, get the
Yes,
feedback and move and move and move and move, right? Like fail fast, fail forward, fail fast, forward, get the feedback, get the feedback, get the feedback. But to your point, when it's always about the goal that's in front of you, right? It's just that goalpost just keeps moving. We forget where we were and where we were and where we were, and it keeps looking like I'm not there, I'm not there, I'm not there. And it's like, no, like you have to look backwards to be able to measure the forward. And I
gotcha.
I really appreciate that perspective as well. It's like you have to be willing to look back to see where you were. I have a previous client of mine, she's in her 60s, and she had a massive stroke 22 months ago.
Mm,
Had no idea. We finally got to connect and I find out and I'm like, oh my gosh, let me know how I can support you. Anyway, so we end up on a call, our second call, I think it was like 2 weeks ago. And she's frustrated about not being able to walk yet. And she wants to walk without a cane. She wants to be in no pain. She wants to be able to cook for herself and live on her own. And I'm like, oh, good. Yes, ma'am. All true, fair desires, like great things. And she's like pissed at herself and she's getting frustrated about not being motivated. Like,
mm,
like, what's the point? I can't do this and I can't do that. And I'm like, honey, 22 months ago, sitting up for 10 seconds was a win. And
right,
now you are living in assisted living by yourself, walking with the cane, moving around. Like, damn it, woman.
right,
You
right,
know?
right. And that falls in line with like kind of looking at where you're at and celebrating the wins. I've heard an expression that life, um, uh, when you live life forward, it's an art, but when you stop and look back, it's a science because you can kind of see when you look back where kind of all the dots connected, right? And where it all made sense. Where in that exact moment, you're like, I don't know what's coming, but we'll try this kind of deal, right? We'll try it anyways.
Absolutely, totally agree.
So I'm a big fan of acronyms and I love frameworks. I know you've got the CARES framework, but before we get into CARES, I'm gonna tell you about the BOLD framework that we've developed here on this podcast because it's very much this BOLD framework will help you essentially will live your best audacious life. And so it stands for better than yesterday, and it's tied into the concept of it's fantastic what you did yesterday. So you climbed that massive mountain. What are you doing today? How are you outdoing yourself? Like how you competing against yourself. The O in that framework stands for outlast adversity, We all know there'll be challenges. We know life's gonna throw obstacles at us, but I truly, truly believe that on the other side of that adversity is where the greatness lies. So we've got to outlast that adversity. The L in that framework is live your truth. You've got to be authentic to who you are, and talked about our being on our own individual path. And oftentimes, we'll look to the left or the right and see what Sally or Tom is doing, going, "Oh, we want that," and not recognizing that's their path. And certainly, there's aspects and elements that we can take to help improve ourselves, but ultimately, their path is theirs and mine is mine. And then the last letter in that framework is D, disrupt the norm, which is really breaking off that beaten path. And I'll use the analogy of the Wright brothers. They're learning how to fly a plane, and no people probably looking at it going, "You guys are crazy flying this for birds." And now all of a sudden, it's a part of our being, a part of our society. And so, BOLD is my framework. So I've shared mine. Why don't you share yours, Cares? Tell us all about that.
Oh, first, I just want to acknowledge you. I think that's a beautiful framework. That's
Thank you.
such a quick, simple, high level way for people to be able to like have checkpoints, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Am I doing that, right? Like where have I not outlasted that adversity, right? Where could I build more resiliency on the other side of that, right? And I just think, yeah, that's a really and disrupting, yeah, like
yeah. That's the one. Let's shake
I
it
think
up.
that's how you break patterns, right? Like that's you get the awareness of where am I playing small, where am I not building the resiliency or whatever. So where do I need to disrupt my own pattern,
That's
not
right. That's right.
disrupt,
That's right.
the environment and the world. It's
That's
like me,
right. Right.
where did I disrupt me?
Yeah, yeah. And then it's okay to, right? I think that's a part like you have permission to. There's nothing wrong with it because I think, where we get ourselves in troubles, we think that it's not the right thing to do. So we do play small,
Yeah,
right? And it's just the exact opposite. We should play as big as we can. The other thing I like about that framework is not something you've got to follow in succession, BOLD. Your entry point can be wherever you're at, right? It's meeting you where you are in this game and figuring out what needs to happen or what else you can incorporate. And that's really what it's about.
I love it. Nice. So cares came from meeting with my dad's best friend, who they work with first responders and military and veterans and all these people in multiple ways. And they wanted us to support them in their communication element of a training they already had. And he and I sat down and we talked about it. And I'm like, hey, we're putting a band-aid on a symptom of a much bigger problem. And because we were talking about law enforcement suicide tripling over the last 3 years, and like, it's just, this is a symptom. And he's like, great, tell me more. And so he's like, hey, can you build an 8-hour course for us for first responders specifically? I'm like, absolutely. So doing that, we built CARES, which is communication, awareness, resiliency, emotional literacy, and self-mastery. And in building that class for a first responder group, my partner and I realized that these are the elements that we love. Like these are the things we're passionate about talking about. These are the things we're
Mhm.
passionate about teaching, about empowering people with, and bringing it really onto the ground, onto the earth, onto the court in ways that are practical and applicable and tactical and not just fluff and talk and just go meditate and breathe, right? Like how do you move forward? Because as you've seen the name of the company, right? Motive action. We need motivation and we need action. We need to understand and we need to take steps. And so it's really meant to, as I mentioned before, bring you back to yourself, self-leadership first, awareness of yourself. Resiliency, in my opinion, of what we do is a byproduct
Mm,
because you're communicating better, you're more aware, you're developing emotional literacy, which in our context means you're starting to understand, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? Because we mislabel what we feel all the time, all
mm,
the time. And if you're mislabeling what you're feeling, you're not processing it the right way for yourself, right? If,
right.
if you think you're angry, but in fact you're hurt, which is really common, you're trying to process anger but you're hurt. So the hurt just gets stuck and it doesn't go anywhere. Right. And then the
Mhm.
self mastery, right? The ability to navigate yourself in these tough situations, tough moments, difficult conversations, difficult relationships, whatever they might be. So we've broken it down into an actual course. And then we also still both do some private coaching on the side for people who really want to dive a lot deeper into that kind of idea.
What I so when you talk about cares, one of the things that sort of comes to my mind as you're describing it, how it seems to have a nice combination of sort of the emotional piece, which is very, very important because we're humans, we're emotional beings, and so the emotional piece is there. But there's also some logic too, right? Like, does this make sense? And so I'm wondering the process kind of balancing the two, right? There's times where emotion should can take center stage, and other times logic and reason needs to come to the forefront. How do you balance the two?
How I would say you balance the two is you've got to give space and time for the emotion. We
Mm,
tend to want to just go straight to logic, and you're a human. You have emotions that need to be experienced. That doesn't mean they need to take over,
mm,
right? And that's where we want to support people is how do you be with your experience of this big emotion with your physiology, right? With what's happening in your body, like you're sweating, your voice is trembling, your face is getting hot, your throat's seizing up.
yep.
What emotion are you experiencing? Can you be with it for a few? Because emotion actually only like and neurochemically, an emotion only exists for 90 seconds.
Okay.
But we add all the stuff. In fact, we get logical, right? Oh, I shouldn't be feeling this. I have to,
Right.
I
Right.
don't have time. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, you need to set logic aside for just like
Yeah.
literally 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Feel it, describe it, name it, notice it, get clear on the stories you're adding to it that are keeping it stuck.
Yes.
Then we can bring the logic back in of like, okay, now what? Right. So it's
Mm,
not, you can't have either one, or you shouldn't have them both, or you can't have them. It's just give them, it's the proper processing of like, how do I allow them both to have the, uh, the intention that they're both meant for.
So one sometimes could take center stage, and that's fine. But recognizing that that chair might change, and someone else may slot in there and have to be the one that leads forward. And I think that, so. It's recognize that's a good point actually. That recognizing one, so almost like I think of a toolbox, right? And sometimes you're gonna need a wrench, sometimes you need pliers or a hammer or a saw, right? And so I guess it depends what you got in front of you.
Well, yeah, and if we're talking to first responders, right? A lot. If they're in on scene and their life is in danger, we don't want them pausing for the emotion. They need logic front and center. They need to get right into what they know to do to save their own life and protect those
Yes.
who are in that situation. And they need to go back later and they need to take a minute to process like what was that? Like what did I
Yeah.
experience? How am I feeling so I can like not get it stuck and trapped and impacting me later on.
That's right. That's right. Interesting enough, I think when we the more time we spend sort of in that logical space, I think the more room we leave open for judgments to seep in, right? Because if we're constantly trying to make sense of the world, right?
Mm.
If there's if there's a part of that equation that we don't know what it is, our minds and our judgments, we fill in the blanks, right? And we could be way off. And then what we do is we go with that equation that didn't have all the numbers for us, and we plug it in ourselves because we think this is what's got to be, and then we get this answer to this question, and that's what we go with. Not recognize the pieces weren't right to begin with, and so that judgment is very, very mindful. Got to be careful of that.
I love it. It's such a good analogy. It's so true. The brain just wants to it'll grab anything from our past that it sees that kind of fits and it'll just fill in the stories because it really wants to fill in patterns. It likes to complete
Right,
stories,
right.
complete patterns. So yeah, it's how often we don't realize that we're just throwing shit in.
That's right. That's right. I was like, well, right. But what's really interesting when you get to when you start asking like, where did this come from, or even ask why, you're like, yeah, I don't know, right? And you're like, what
Yeah.
evidence do you have that got you here? I
When
don't
did
know.
I decide this? Did I?
It is quite funny, actually. It's quite funny. Um, I'd love to talk about I guess the significance of emotional intelligence, more so from we talked about awareness earlier, but awareness of our own emotional intelligence, how we relate to other people, because that's going to be significant when we talk about our connections and our relationships. And I would agree with you that connections are very, very, very important. But there's an aspect where we need to recognize where our intelligence comes into play here, emotional intelligence comes into play, and how we can help us, connect better with other individuals.
Absolutely. And I say that we use the term emotional literacy in our work because emotional intelligence, right, is a trademarked program that exists out there. It's its whole thing. Um, so when we're talking about it, we're talking more about one, right, label it, understand it, know it, so I can properly navigate it in that moment and recognize that what's happening in my physiology in that moment is it's a primal need to it's probably something I've developed as a child to not experience that emotion, right?
Mm.
Because the big
Mhm.
scary emotions, fear, anxiety, rejection, annihilation, like isolation, loneliness, right? We're like we said in the early, we're doing everything we can to not feel that. And the reality is, how do we take the time to feel it so we can build that tolerance in our own body? Because then when we get into a conversation with someone else who's literally doing the same thing at the same time,
Mhm.
right? Navigating their own body, navigating their own physiology, their own emotions, so that we can have a conversation that actually will be efficient and effective and meaningful and fulfilling on both sides. But if we can't, again, figure out like, am I, is there real danger, right? Is it fear or is it danger? That's the first step. And
Right.
then, okay, it's fear. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna die. I feel like I'm gonna, right? I feel like everything in me is freaking out. It's like, what element of you doesn't feel safe? What part of you doesn't feel safe?
Right.
In what capacity? And again, am I actually in danger in that way? Is something actually being threatened? We do need to know. I mean, there are situations that's true, and most of the time it's not. And so, how can I breathe through it, be with it, and continue to connect and relate to this other human? Again, because that is what keeps us from feeling helpless and hopeless and alone, right?
Yeah.
So is it more important for you to be right and to not feel the stuff? Or is it more important for you to figure out how to connect?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And that's a key question to ask ourselves, right? Like what we're like, because that will guide us into what our next steps eventually end up being, right? Like, why am I doing this? And yeah, and why is it important to me?
Yeah. Well, and you already alluded to it earlier with like the filling in of the patterns, right? With the
Mhm.
numbers. In those same moments, we are meaning making machines, right? So while we're trying to navigate all our own stuff, we're also having to navigate all these stories. We're making this whole situation mean something, right? Because we
Yes.
take how someone looks at us, how someone, the tone they use, the words they choose. Like we're making it, they're mad at us, they don't like us, so I'm not lovable. And it's like, sorry to burst your bubble. It ain't got nothing to do with
That's
you.
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The reality is everyone's into their own heads, right? That's what we don't get it.
Nothing to do with you.
That's right. That's right. Well, I love, and I'll own that I've done this as well. In terms of sometimes you'll plan out how you think a conversation will go, and the conversations never happen. I'm gonna say this. They're gonna say that. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say that. Like it just you got it all mapped out and planned perfectly. And when you get there, you're like, oh, that was better than I thought it was. Right? Like
Totally.
just gotta get out of our heads. Just get out of our heads.
But planning it out ahead of time sometimes is a good way to get out of your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really
True,
is.
true, true, true. So I want to also touch on sort of the action aspect of the work that you do, and it's very very clear. It's motive action is part of right in the brand, so it's clear that you want people to understand that it's significant. But I want to sort of talk about the process and realizing the significance for action. Like when did you go, okay, now this needs to be a part of our work because it's that important.
So my business partner is one who came up with mode of action, first of all.
Hmm.
But she's also, I mean, she's just a very action-driven human. She's 1.6% of women own businesses in a male-dominated industry, like within 5 years, just brilliant businesswoman. And it's just, I'm like, how do I want to put this? You can't think yourself out of something you talked yourself into,
Wow.
right? Or worked yourself into. It's like most people that I meet who are starting their journey, myself included,
Hmm.
they're always like, what book do you have? And like, it's a great place to start. It's because again, it's scary, right? We got to like, maybe we need some baby steps. Not everybody wants to jump in the deep end, and that's fine.
Right. Right.
But eventually, you're not going to be able to see yourself out of your own trap. You're not going to be able to, you can't see behind your back
Right.
without a mirror or without somebody behind you to tell you what's going on. And so you need to take the action, first of all, of like, how can I see what I can't see? Where are my blind spots? I don't know what I don't know, first of all. Then the only way to break the patterns is to literally practice being in the uncomfortable spaces. Like we said, we've spent our whole life trying not to experience fear, anxiety, isolation, blah, 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 all those things. So the only way then to learn how to get that tolerance, if you will, is to go be with them. And that means go do the things that you would never do. For example, this human right here used to be terrified of public speaking.
Mm,
And now I literally get on stages and talk to hundreds and thousands of people. But I learned not only which is courage, but I also learned I wasn't afraid of public speaking. I was afraid of being seen, heard, and known,
right.
which really boils down to I was afraid of being rejected, judged, right? It's still those same basic things. So then I started putting myself out there. I started speaking at small events. I started going to bigger events and just,
Yes.
again, right, the courage to
Love
go
it.
push yourself into those spaces that feel really uncomfortable and give yourself the grace at what pace you need to do that. No one's saying that, like, oh, you're scared of public speaking, go try to book talking to 1,000 people. Like, I'm not saying that. I am saying find something that you can navigate enough,
Hmm.
challenge that old pattern and that old story.
I think public speaking is something that a lot of people, at least the fear of public speaking, is something a lot of people can relate to. I can vividly recall a time where, and for me, it wasn't a fear of public speaking. I had a fear of being misunderstood, and maybe some of the judgments come in as well too. So the worst thing you could possibly do is let me speak to you and just look at me and not acknowledge, not head nod, not a, kind of be like, oh my gosh, they can't hear me, and I climb up and what used to happen is I would literally like stop speaking like in meetings or group settings, and there were people there would say, "Yeah, but Audley, you know about this. So you have I know you have a perspective on this because I've had these dialogues one on one with these individuals, and." When people start to draw me out, I'm like, yeah, I can't stay small. I got to say something, right? Because like it's there. And so a little technique or trick that I started to incorporate is, and again, for me, it worked in a smaller group setting, but what it did, it gave me the confidence to go beyond that. But I used to do these check-ins. I'd say, I go, da, 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 what do you think? Does that make sense? And that question, does that make sense, started to become a regular. And most times people go, yeah, 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 yeah. But that gave me enough to keep going, right? As opposed to making a point. Okay, are they hearing me? Did they understand it? Should I stop? Should I say it again? Like that. Like it eliminates all that in my head because I've said it doesn't make sense. Yes, okay, move on. And that was something I had to for myself. So I share that because it's going to be different for everyone. We're all going to have whatever little motivating thing to keep us going to allow us to take action. It's going to be incumbent on us to figure that out for ourselves. But that was but it's there, I guess, really the point. And yeah, it's funny, even to this day I still find myself saying, does that make sense? And it's just a habitual thing now, but I'm still checking in.
It's a good check-in. I mean, it's funny because private clients especially talk a lot about how do we challenge these patterns. And for all the like the people pleasers out there, right?
Mm,
Like two things. One, we'll make them go cut in line somewhere.
yeah.
You have to go cut in line and just how are you doing? And they're like, oh my God, I can't possibly cut in line. I'm like, the whole point is just to practice noticing, even if you end up going back to the back of the line afterwards, like notice what's happening and the stories you're telling yourself and the concerns and all the things, right? It's just to see what is happening so I can get in the moment.
Yes.
In the
Yes.
moment, because we abandon ourselves in those moments so often that we don't have any clue what's actually going on. So it's like, how can I put myself in that moment? How can I look for those moments in a way so that I can get in it and root in it and find out what's really going on?
Yeah, that absolutely definitely is key. Last thing I want to talk to you about is this communication, and I know again that's sort of another sort of falls under the work that you do. Um, to this day, for the longest time, I felt like communication was always an undervalued skill. We naturally just assume that everyone can communicate effectively. Like I've got a friend of mine. He and I are always we're always getting to it every so often because he'll say something and with no context, and I'll have no idea what he's talking about. And I'll like say, yo, like, give me some context because I'm tired of giving you context. I'm always giving you context, right? And so it's just like, he just wants to jump into it. But there's an aspect of this where like context does help shape things, it helps frame things in people's mind, and it helps you understand and make sense of the world as I would see it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on so many things here. I'm a former educator.
Okay.
We don't teach kids how to communicate. You learn how to communicate in school?
I, nah, that,
No. I mean, we teach communication in it, but it's an most places it's an elective class.
right,
First of all, then let's fast forward to today's kids, right? And they're constantly on devices. They're
right,
not only not taught how to communicate in school, but now they have something that's separating them even more, right? For those social skills. But just generally speaking, we are not taught how to communicate. We're taught how to know
right,
the answers. We're taught how to memorize. We tend to just make assumptions, like you said, because it's faster, it's easier. And again, the brain just wants like the fastest path, the path of least resistance.
right.
But the reality is there's so many pieces to communication. There's so many layers and so many levels and so many elements. But in our courses in our class, like we want to give some of those practical quick tips of how can you start communicating more effectively and better. For example, one of our favorite, like people love our conversational preframe. Like how can you set a conversation up for success ahead of time,
Hmm.
right? Before it even starts. And this works in business, this works professionally, personally, it doesn't matter. And it's either I, as the listener, am going to ask these four questions, or as the speaker, I'm going to say, this is what I need. Right. So if I'm the listener, I'm going to pause someone and be like, hey, 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 I really want to best listen. I want to best serve you. I want to really support you in this conversation. Do you need me to be on your side? Do you need perspective? Maybe you can't see through the trees, right? Do you just need to vent, or do you need to fix it? Most of us just want to fix it,
Right,
right? Most of us go into a conversation of how do I fix it? How do I exit? Right? And for so many different reasons, usually because we have issues with being with whatever is dealing with in that moment. But when I ask that to somebody or I tell that to somebody, we get to have a more effective, more efficient, and more fulfilling conversation. And it literally looks
mhm,
like this. I have a friend call me. I'm driving down I-35. She is very emotional. She can barely speak, right?
right, right, right,
Stop her. And I'm like, hey, why don't you do some box breathing? 4 breaths in, 4 breath hold, 4 breath out, 4 breath hold. Do that for a little bit while I talk to you and just hear me out as best you can because I really want to serve you. You're obviously upset.
yep,
She starts breathing and then I ask her, you know, do you need me to be on your side? Do you need perspective? Right? Do you need to vent? Do you need to fix it? And it took her a couple minutes to get calm. And then she told me, she's like, I need to vent because I haven't told anybody this story. I'm like,
hmm,
okay. Like, but then I need you to help me fix it. I need ideas. I need to know what to
right,
do because I don't know what to do. So this conversation that could have been who knows what was very effective, was very efficient, was very fulfilling. And she got what she needed, more importantly, right? To be able to like calm herself and then have a plan. So people will tell you if you give them a chance.
right,
And if we tell people, like I tell people all the time, give people the manual.
right, right, right,
Give them
right,
the
right.
answers to the test ahead of time.
I would also say that something very, very important that you did in that conversation with your friend, very subtle but very, very important, is you focus on the breathing as a way of helping calm down and sort of regulating your physiology. I think that is sometimes an under valued or maybe not fully recognized how significant that is. That when you're going through something stressful, challenging, hard, a point of burnout, the importance of just breathing and taking your time, slowing things down because that allows you to see the full picture in its fullness as opposed to one piece that you're getting a very emotional for. And so that it was very subtle, but I wanted to highlight because that was an important thing too.
It really is. I'm appreciate you catching that because
Yeah.
it is something that we again don't take into account as
Yeah.
the communicator, right? That if someone's in their emotions and you've learned how to navigate, but they haven't, for example, we call it's called the logic ceiling with some friends of mine, Todd and Cole Whitty, who run the Condor approach, fabulous humans.
Hmm.
And it's this idea that our emotions allow us to or don't allow us to access certain levels of our consciousness, right? And if we're extremely emotional the way she was, um, not with me, she wouldn't have been at a physical safety concern, but she was definitely at that emotional safety concern.
Right. Right.
She's not going to hear anything outside of that. Like there was no way. She was in protection mode. She's in keep everything right here because I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do mode. She can't hear a whole lot of other things. And that's with most people. If they're in that elevated emotional state, how do we calm the nervous system? How do we bring them back down to regulated so that we can have the conversation we're trying to have? Because if they're in protection mode, they are not in connection mode.
Right. Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Jen, this has been phenomenal. I mean, I've really enjoyed the chat with you today, and certainly the insights. I oftentimes talk in my mind, at the end of these conversations, like think about what did I take away? What did I appreciate? And I certainly appreciate the conversation around about action and why that's so significant. So thank you for doing that. For listeners that wanted to learn more about you and the work that you do, where could we send them?
Motivaction.academy is our website. It's the simplest because you can access email addresses. You can set up a call with us very easily from there as well. And then we're also on all the social medias, LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. I'm on TikTok, but no, it sucks me in so much. I just don't even want to do it. We do have a YouTube channel as well,
Okay, cool.
Life by Choice. So yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, we're going to make sure all the appropriate contact details are in the show notes as well. So thank you for that. And again, great stuff. Thanks for the insights, and I appreciate you for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed the back and forth. It's so much more fun for me as someone who loves conversation, right? To just bounce versus like, here's the set of questions. So thank you for the engagement.
Well, and isn't that what it should be? Like, come on now.
I like
it. Thank you. Back we are here on the podcast. During my conversation with Jenifer, one of the most powerful takeaways was the emphasis on self-leadership and self-awareness as the cornerstones of meaningful change. So often we find ourselves trapped in cycles of fear and self-doubt, hesitant to take that leap into the unknown. And Jenifer's insights encourage us to confront these fears head on and take proactive steps towards personal growth. I particularly love how she introduced the CARES framework. And, I'm a big fan of acronyms. And so I certainly love that. It's not just a set of concepts. It really is a practical guide that empowers us to enhance our emotional literacy and communication skills. By understanding our emotions and learning to articulate them effectively, we can foster deeper connections in our personal and professional relationships. I think what resonated with me the most was Jenifer's assertion that courage is a skill we can develop over time. This perspective shifts the narrative from viewing courage as an elusive trait to recognizing that it's an achievable goal through consistent practice. Some people think that it's first meant for others and we can't have it. Well, that's not at all what Jenifer is saying. I absolutely love that. It really is a reminder that every small step we take towards confronting our fears is a victory worth celebrating. I encourage you to connect with Jenifer directly to learn more about her work and explore how the CARES framework can benefit you. You can find her contact details in the show notes below, along with any special offers or products that she may have for you as well. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. I hope you found inspiration and actionable insights to help you lead your best audacious life. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, subscribe, or share it with others. Your support is invaluable in helping our podcast grow and reach those who need it the most. Remember, living audaciously is about taking bold steps towards your dreams and embracing the journey. Until next time, keep pushing those boundaries and don't forget to embrace the audacious life that awaits you. Stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.